You're hiking alone in the mountains. The sun is starting to set, casting long shadows across the ridgeline. You stop to catch your breath and look up at the peaks around you. That's when you see it. A tall, dark figure standing on the ridge above you, completely motionless, just watching. You blink, thinking it's a trick of the light, but it's still there. A human shape, but wrong somehow. Too tall, too still. You look away for just a second, and when you look back, it's gone. But you can still feel it, watching you from somewhere you can't see. Today I'm talking about one of the oldest and most persistent paranormal phenomena in North America. The Dark Watchers. Silent, shadowy figures that have been observed standing on mountain ridges for centuries. And here's what makes this truly unsettling. The sightings are consistent across hundreds of years, reported by people who had no contact with each other, describing the exact same entities in the exact same locations. So what are the Dark Watchers? They're tall, dark, humanoid figures, often described as being 7 to 15 feet tall, that appear on mountain ridges and hilltops, usually at dawn or dusk. They don't move much. They don't approach people. They just stand there, silhouette against the sky, watching hikers and travelers below. Sometimes they're seen wearing wide-brimmed hats or cloaks. Sometimes they appear to be carrying staffs or walking sticks. But they're always watching, always silent. And they've been doing this for at least 300 years, probably much longer. The Dark Watchers are most commonly seen in the Santa Lucia Mountains along California's Big Sur coastline, but they've been reported throughout the coastal ranges of California and in other mountain regions across the western United States. The native Chumash people have stories about these entities going back centuries. They called them the Old Ones and warned against traveling alone in the mountains because these beings would follow solitary travelers. Spanish explorers in the 1700s wrote about seeing giant, shadowy figures on the mountain ridges that would vanish when approached. Early American settlers reported the same thing, and people are still seeing them today. Let me tell you about some of these encounters because they follow a disturbing pattern. There's a hiker who was backpacking alone in the Santa Lucia Mountains in 2015. It was late afternoon, that golden hour before sunset. He stopped at a clearing to set up camp and looked up at the ridge about a quarter mile away. Standing there, completely still, was a massive dark figure. He estimated it was at least 10 feet tall. It appeared to be wearing a long cloak or robe and a wide-brimmed hat. He watched it for several minutes. It didn't move at all, not even swaying in the wind. He decided to hike closer to get a better look. The moment he started moving toward it, the figure simply vanished. Not walking away, not ducking behind rocks, just gone. He searched the ridge when he got there. Nothing. No footprints, no disturbance in the dirt, nothing. But for the rest of his trip, he felt watched, like something was observing him from just out of sight. Then there's the account from a woman who was hiking with her dog in Big Sur in 2018. Her dog suddenly stopped on the trail and started growling at something up on the ridge. She looked up and saw a tall, dark figure standing there, perfectly still, watching them. She said it was shaped like a person, but seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, like a shadow that was somehow more solid than it should be. Her dog was terrified, whimpering and pulling on the leash to go back the way they came. She tried to take a photo, but when she looked at her phone, the figure wasn't in the frame, even though she could see it clearly with her eyes. She backed away slowly, and the figure remained motionless until she rounded a bend in the trail. When she looked back, it was gone. She never went back to that trail. A group of experienced hikers in 2020 reported seeing 3 dark watchers simultaneously on different ridges surrounding their campsite. This was in the Los Padres National Forest. They said the figures appeared around dusk and remained visible for about 20 minutes, just standing there in 3 different locations, all facing their camp. The hikers said the feeling of being watched was overwhelming and oppressive. None of them slept well that night. They all had the same nightmare about being followed through the mountains by silent, shadowy figures. When they packed up to leave the next morning, all 3 figures were gone. But they found no footprints or any sign that anyone had been on those ridges. What makes the Dark Watchers different from other shadow people or paranormal entities is their behavior. They don't approach people. They don't enter homes or interact directly. They just watch. They appear almost exclusively in mountainous areas, usually on ridgelines or peaks where they're silhouetted against the sky. They're seen most often during twilight hours, that liminal time between day and night when shadows are longest and light plays tricks. And they seem to prefer solitary targets or small groups rather than large crowds. Scientists and skeptics have tried to explain the Dark Watchers as a phenomenon called Brocken specter, which is when a person's shadow is cast onto clouds or mist in high mountain areas, creating a giant shadow that can look like a separate figure. But that doesn't explain several things. First, Brocken specters require specific atmospheric conditions that aren't always present during Dark Watcher sightings. Second, Brocken specters move when the person moves, but Dark Watchers remain stationary even when the observer moves. Third, multiple people have seen Dark Watchers from different angles simultaneously, which wouldn't be possible with a Brocken specter. And fourth, Brocken specters don't explain the feeling of dread and being watched that almost everyone reports. There's also the pareidolia explanation, the idea that our brains are wired to see human shapes in random patterns, especially in low light. We see faces in clouds, figures in shadows, that sort of thing. And sure, that explains some sightings. But it doesn't explain why people see these figures in the same specific locations over and over again, across centuries. It doesn't explain why they vanish when approached. And it doesn't explain the consistent details. The height, the clothing, the staffs, the wide-brimmed hats. These aren't random shadow blobs that vaguely look humanoid. These are detailed, consistent figures that people describe in nearly identical terms, despite having no knowledge of previous sightings. So what are they? The theories range from the scientific to the supernatural. Some researchers think they might be interdimensional beings, entities that exist in a space adjacent to ours and occasionally become visible under certain conditions. The mountain ridges might be thin places where the barrier between dimensions weakens. Others believe they're nature spirits or guardians of the mountains, ancient entities that have existed in these places long before humans arrived. The Chumash believed they were powerful spirits that watched over the land and warned travelers to respect the wilderness. There's a darker theory that the Dark Watchers are something predatory. They're watching hikers and travelers, studying them for reasons we don't understand. Some people who've encountered them report feeling drained afterward, exhausted beyond what the hike should have caused. Others report a sense of doom or impending danger that made them leave the area immediately. A few people have reported seeing the Dark Watchers seemingly following them, appearing on different ridges as they hiked, always maintaining that distance, always watching. That's not passive observation. That's tracking. Another theory suggests they might be time slips or echoes from the past. Perhaps we're seeing figures from another time period, maybe ancient inhabitants of these mountains who are somehow imprinted on the landscape. That would explain the old-fashioned clothing some witnesses describe. But it doesn't explain why they seem to react to modern observers, why they vanish when approached, or why they appear to be actively watching people. Here's something that really bothers me. The Dark Watchers have been seen in the same locations for centuries. The same ridges, the same peaks, the same trails. There are specific spots in the Santa Lucia Mountains where sightings are so common that locals know not to hike there alone. These aren't random occurrences scattered across the landscape. They're concentrated in specific areas, like these entities are territorial or assigned to certain locations. What are they guarding? What are they watching for? And why do they only watch? They don't attack. They don't approach. They don't communicate. They just stand there, silent and still, observing. Some paranormal researchers think this is the most disturbing aspect. If they were aggressive or hostile, we'd know they're a threat and could respond accordingly. But their passive watching creates a different kind of fear. The fear of being studied. The fear of being monitored by something we don't understand for purposes we can't guess. It's the same fear you'd feel if you discovered cameras hidden in your house. Someone is watching, but you don't know why or what they're planning to do with that information. There are reports, less common but still documented, of the dark watchers doing more than just standing still. Some hikers have reported seeing them move, gliding along ridgelines without appearing to walk, their movements unnaturally smooth. A few people claim to have seen dark watchers pointing, as if directing attention to something or someone. And there are rare accounts of hikers who ignored the dark watchers, who hiked deeper into the mountains despite seeing these figures, and experienced unexplained phenomena. Equipment failures, sudden weather changes, a feeling of being hopelessly lost even on familiar trails, or time distortions where hours passed but felt like minutes. One particularly disturbing account from 2017 involves a solo hiker who saw a dark watcher on a ridge and decided to investigate despite feeling uneasy. He hiked up to where the figure had been standing. When he reached the spot, he found nothing, but he said the air felt heavy and wrong. His GPS stopped working. His phone died even though it had been fully charged. He tried to hike back down and realized he couldn't find the trail he just used. He wandered for hours in increasing panic before finally finding a different trail that led him out. When he checked his phone later, it turned back on, and he'd been missing for 7 hours, but it had only felt like 2. He refuses to hike in those mountains anymore. If you encounter a dark watcher while hiking, here's what experienced hikers and paranormal investigators recommend. Don't approach them. I know curiosity is powerful, but every account of someone trying to get closer ends with the figure vanishing and the person experiencing something unsettling. Don't stare at them for too long. Note their presence, acknowledge what you're seeing, then continue on your way. Many people report that the feeling of being watched intensifies the more attention you give them. Trust your instincts. If you see a dark watcher and every fiber of your being is telling you to leave the area, listen to that instinct. Our bodies often sense danger before our conscious minds recognize it. Don't hike alone in areas known for dark watcher sightings, especially at dawn or dusk. There's safety in numbers, and these entities seem to prefer solitary observers. If you do see one and you're with a group, verify that others see it too. Sometimes our eyes play tricks on us, but if multiple people see the same thing, you know it's real. And document it if you can, but don't become so focused on getting proof that you ignore safety. Take a photo if possible and note the time and location, but then leave. This isn't something you want to provoke or challenge. The dark watchers have been standing on those ridges for centuries, maybe millennia. They were there before us, and they'll probably be there long after we're gone. They're part of the mountains now, woven into the landscape and the folklore. The Chumash respected them. The Spanish feared them. Modern hikers are fascinated by them. but none of us really understand what they are or what they want. Maybe they're guardians, ancient protectors of sacred places. Maybe they're something else entirely. Entities from another dimension that occasionally become visible in ours. Maybe they're watching us the way we watch animals in nature, with detached curiosity about creatures they don't fully understand. Or maybe they're waiting for something, observing us until whatever they're waiting for happens. What scares me most is the patience. These things have been watching for centuries without changing their behavior. That kind of patience isn't human. It's something else. And anything that can watch silently for hundreds of years without revealing its purpose is something we should be very, very careful around. The next time you're hiking in the mountains and you see a tall figure standing on a distant ridge, completely motionless against the sky, pay attention. Note its presence, respect it, and then get out of there. Because the dark watchers aren't just shadows or tricks of light. They're real. They're watching, and we still don't know why. Have you seen the dark watchers? Have you felt eyes on you while hiking alone in the mountains? Share your experiences in the comments. But remember, talking about them might draw their attention, and you might start noticing them in places you never did before. Thanks for watching. Stay safe on the trails, and if you see something watching from the ridges, don't try to get closer. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved.